Previously, we have only seen how we can work with lists in a for loop. So what we would do is we could use a list and iterate through each of the elements inside that list using a for loop and then perform something with each of the items. But what if we want to create a for loop which is completely independent from a list and we want to run it for a certain amount of time, for example 20 times or 30 times? This is where the range function comes in. The range function is used in a for loop like this. We have our for loop and then inside of our variable, which in this case is called number, we store a number. And the range function takes two values. The first one is A and the second one is B. And then after that we can perform something using that number. So let's look at this practically in code. Let's comment out the previous code that we wrote for the for loop, and below this we are going to look at the range function. So we will create a for loop that runs 20 times. So we'll use for and then our number in range, and then inside that we are going to give two values, let's say 1 and 20. So what this will do is it will run the loop from 1 to 20 but not including 20. So the first time when the loop runs, 1 will be stored inside our number variable. For the second time, 2 will be stored inside our number variable. For the third time, 3 will be stored. So on and so forth, all the way to 19, where 19 will be stored inside the number variable, and then after that it will stop at 20. So it will not perform 20, it will stop at 1 less than 20. So let's just print out each of these numbers and check it out. So I will run my code. As you can see, it printed from 1 to 19 but not 20. So it excluded 20. If we want to include 20, then we would have to run from 1 to 21, which if I run the code now, as you can see, it printed out from 1 to 20 instead of 19. Using the range function, we are actually going to be solving a problem. So let's look at a use case of the range function. Karl Gauss was a mathematician, and when he was a young child, his teacher gave him a problem. So she told him to add up all the numbers from 1 to 100, and she thought that this will take Carl at least half an hour to 1 hour and she would have some peace. But to her surprise, Carol came back within 2 minutes and gave her the solution. So what Carol did was something like this. If we have all of the numbers from 1 to 100 and then we add them 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 like that, and if we invert those numbers like this and we have them below the first sequence, so 100 plus 99 plus 98, so on and so forth, if we add these two numbers it will be 101. If we add these two numbers it will be 101. If we add this it will be 101, so on and so forth. So actually this is going to be 50 sequences of 101. So he just multiplied 50 with 101 and came up with the answer of 5050. Now we can actually perform this even faster than Carol using the range function. So let's look at it in code. So what I will do is I will update my range function. First, I will remove the print statement, and instead of running from 1 to 21, I will run from 1 to 101. Why 101? Because if I provide 100, then it will stop at 99. But if I provide 101, it will stop at 100. And then after that, I will create a variable and just call it sum. I will set it to 0. Now what we can do is we can just add the number that we are currently at to sum, and at the end if I print out the sum variable and if I run my code, as you can see in here, it gave us the same result of 5050. So what it did is it ran this loop 100 times, and each time it ran, we just added the current number that it was storing to our sum variable. So if I actually print out each of the number like so, as you can see in here, the loop ran from 1 all the way down to 100, and this 0 is just because of the sum variable that we are printing at the end. And the final thing that we are going to look at about the range function is how we can increase the increment in each of the iterations. So I will remove this piece of code, and what I mean is that we are using the range function to loop from 1 to 101, meaning from 1 to 100. And instead of having the range function increase by 1 each time, meaning the first iteration will be 1, then the second one will be 2, then 3, then 4, so on and so forth. Let's say we want it to increase by 2. So instead of having 1 and then 2, it should be 1, then 3, then 5, then 7, so on and so forth. So it should increase by 2. So I will create a for loop, and inside that we will have our number in range of 0 and 101. And in here I will add another argument which is called the steps, and I will provide 2. And now if I print out the number like so, and if I run my code, as you can see, it increased by 2. So instead of having 0 and 1, we have 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, so on and so forth. So it is increasing by 2 each time. We can increase it by, let's say, 50. And if I run the code now, it will output 0, 50, and then 100. So it incremented from 0 to 50 by 50. Then it incremented by 50 again, so it came to 100, and then the loop stopped. In the next video, I have a coding exercise for you that's going to test your knowledge of the range function. So for all of that and more, I'll see you there.